The bubonic plague killed an estimated 50 million Europeans in the span of 4 years. 1,000 years later, a new plague surfaces with the potential to cause 10 times the loss of human life. Not wanting to risk a catastrophic outbreak, all known victims were quarantined to a medical research satellite along with leading medical scientists from around the world to find a way to stop the plague from wreaking havoc before it even happened. Unknown to the citizens of Earth, however, artificially comatose human test subjects were also taken on board. You are one of these guinea pigs, and you have woken up. You must find a way to escape the facility and survive the plague you've been infected with. Project Zinc will be a first-person action-adventure game with an emphasis on puzzle solving and, to a lesser extent, 3D platforming. It will ship on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. The player's main objective in Project Zinc will be to make it to the escape pods of the space station, while avoiding and surviving plague victims and other environmental hazards of the space station and curing themselves of any infections they contract. Arguably the most important feature of the game is how the player interacts with the game's environment, and a unique tool can be an iconic way to do so. The Olympus will be that unique tool. Different modules will be available for the player to put into the Olympus, with each module changing the tool's functionality. Examples of some specific modules include a gravity gun module, a water gun module, an item scaler, and a hacking tool. The Olympus will only have room for 2 modules, however, which will introduce a unique, meaningful choice and make players strategize and plan out which module to use for certain situations. One of the most important concepts about the Olympus is the lack of traditional violence to solve the player's challenges. Too many games being released rely on firearms or other methods of traditional violence to attract players. To further explain, several first-person action games have the player shoot enemies, walk to the next stage, and repeat. With the Olympus, all combat is non-conventional. Instead of shooting enemies, the water gun module can be used to push enemies away or into traps. The item scaler can be used to shrink enemies to nothingness, and the gravity gun could pin them to the ceiling. This non-conventional combat will not only catch potential buyers' eyes, but it will also stand out to critics as innovative and risk-taking. If given the proper dedication, the Olympus can become an iconic image of the game and be easily recognizable symbol of the company's success, much like Mario's mushrooms, Link's Master Sword, and the hidden wrist blades of Assassin's Creed. Players crave diversity of gameplay, and having a truly unique take on the player's primary tool is the most iconic way to provide players with that diversity. The Olympus will also fit into Project Zinc's aesthetics as a polished white piece of futuristic equipment. Project Zinc's main aesthetics will consist of a space station and the rooms within. Due to the numerous labs and living quarters, the size of the space station will be of an extremely large scale. The lab will hold home to scientists conducting virus experiments on human test subjects. The detail in the lab will consist of the equipment and utensils used for the experiments. The appearance will give a clear understanding of a sterile environment with all white walls and equipment. Walking down the halls to the other rooms, the doors will open with motion. The futuristic look of the living quarters will showcase items of geometric shapes and recessed lighting. As the player moves through the shuttle, they will catch a glimpse of the space around them through rectangular windows throughout the rooms. After the horror begins, the sterile environments are no more. The escaped human test subjects must make their way through the shuttle, avoiding the infected. The once clean labs are now covered in blood of the scientists that conducted the experiments. Rooms and lab equipment are in disarray. The motion-activated doors are now malfunctioning due to the emergency alarm system. The infected can be seen through the doors, windows, throwing objects at the doors and slamming their fists to try and escape. From the objects the player comes in contact with, the walls that guide the player in the right direction, and the environment that delivers the visual aid of the character's location. The aesthetics give the player an array of emotions. The visual aids give the player direction on where they need to go. The player may begin with a calm feeling while walking through the clean and organized labs. As the terror continues, the bloodstained walls and aftermath of the infected will give the player higher anxiety. The aesthetics work with the storyline in order to flood the player's senses, each part being a puzzle piece that lures the player in for more. While the player is maneuvering through the space station to save themselves from the infected and find a cure, the player will also be guided by the sounds betrayed by the environment. Project Zinc's audio is something more than sound effect. It's more than a catchy tune in the background for the player to enjoy. This was chosen to be a part of Project Zinc because it will aid the player throughout their journey. Audio is mentality to entice the player, and that's exactly what it will do. For example, say the player is approaching a body in a hallway and they decide to ignore it, as there's a sharp sound or the music suddenly spikes to startle the player. Another way the feature will be important. The player is running from an enemy and the game is silent. The player should feel afraid, but the sounds isn't helping what the player should be feeling. So all that being said, the game's audio will be a mix of calming, exploring tune to an intense or upbeat tune in combat, the rambling of the NPCs, and all the way to the breathing of the protagonist within the game. The realistic and well-placed movement of characters, terrain, and objects will give a very unique life to our game. As shown in some of our sources, we plan on creating a very diverse set of moves for our character to utilize. Hiding, diving, and crawling to avoid enemy detection will be vital throughout patches of the game when goods are scarce to be found. The heavy and rigid bodies of objects like desks and lockers will have to be pushed and pulled to barricade the infected out of certain areas. In the event that our player will have to journey outside to repair the shuttle, we will use realistic wind and environmental movements to capture the dangers and harshness of the climate. Finally, we are putting together a great AI movement system that will change depending on character detection, injuries, and noise. Short bursts in speed, crawling, or dragging oneself because of injuries are all within the arsenal of movement we are putting together for our infected beings. Imagine a game where the world you're a part of is actually living, breathing, or even evolving around you, never staying the same. This is the experience the player will be having while battling against the AI in this game. The player will come across 3 different stages of the infected throughout the game. Stage 1. Still a sick, weak-looking human experiencing involuntary actions when interacting with the player. All the way to Stage 3, where the AI hardly resembles something human, looking to violently attack the player on sight. The AI will advance from stage to stage as the player makes their way throughout the game. The AI will be detecting the player through sight, sound, the player's sickness level, and even smell in some cases. The AI can actually actively hunt the player through smell if and when it reaches stage 3 of infection. If the player is within vicinity, the AI will make its way in the general direction of the player, looking to seek them out. But the player does have a way to counteract this feature. If the player kills one of the infected or come across the body of one of the infected, they can interact with the body to cover themselves in the scent of the infected for a short period of time. If the player doesn't want to go that route, they can go the route of tracking one of the game's unique features, the player's sickness level. If the player is able to keep their sickness level down, the AI will attack the player on sight. But if the player walks on the riskier side and lets their sickness level get high enough, they will be able to walk among the first 2 stages of infected as if they were one of them. Or finally, the player can take a brighter approach and work through puzzles to come up with individual cures for the infected. Once a cure is crafted by the player, they can use it to render the infected incapacitated, giving the player an easier route to maneuver through. This is where the unique value of the AI comes in. There will never be an exact playthrough from game to game. And since the player will have the option to craft a cure that will save mankind from the deadly plague, the player will be given a crafting system which will be accessible through a research station within safety areas of the facility. This system will allow the player to craft formulas for the cure that the scientists came up with before they died by the hands of the infected. Unsure which formula will work or what effect it will have on the infected, the player will have to test each formula. But there is an easier way for the player to find the right formula or figure out the effects of the concoction. If the player increases their science skill, it will give the player the ability to better understand the notes left by the scientists, as well as slim down the amount of unknown concoctions being made. The main features of Project Zinc: player's tool, aesthetics, audio, the movement, artificial intelligence, and crafting system. is what entices the player to become enthralled into the story of the game. Each feature bounces off the other in order to fully enhance the player's experience. The environment will astound the player by the way the lab looks after the chaos begins, and the audio interactions that grab the player's attention. The environment will astound the player by the way the lab looks after the chaos begins, and the audio interactions that grab the player's attention. The game's iconic weapon will give the game unique interactions between the character and the infected. You must fight the clock in order to survive and find a cure. Once the cure has been found and the escape pod prepared, there is relief. Without knowing if the cure worked, did you save yourself or jeopardize mankind?